behind the glittering city lights that never truly go out, among the tall buildings that reflect the light of luxury, and under the gray sky that almost always hangs over Seattle, there is a reality that is rarely seen. This city is known as a center of innovation. It's a place where big ideas are born and billions of dollars circulate daily. Giant companies like Amazon and Microsoft have changed the face of the city, making it a symbol of modern American success. But behind all that, there is another side that grows slowly and almost unheard of. On cold street corners, under dark bridges, and on sidewalks that thousands of people pass every day without looking back, there are people who live without a place to call home. Not because they choose it, not because they never tried, but because, at some point in their lives, something collapsed. Maybe a job disappeared overnight. Maybe a sudden rent spike. Or maybe a personal crisis that no one saw coming. From there, the thin line between living normally and losing everything begins to disappear. In a wealthy city like this, where technology continues to advance, there are still thousands of people trapped, just trying to survive today. Ironically, the higher the buildings rise, the deeper the shadows they cast. And within those shadows, this story begins. At first glance, Seattle seems like a dream city. It's a place where the future feels closer, where technology advances quickly, and where opportunity seems open to anyone brave enough to pursue it. Here, grand offices with gleaming glass walls stand tall. Employees move in and out at a brisk pace, carrying laptops, ideas, and big ambitions. Companies like Amazon continue to grow, expanding their influence across the globe, while Microsoft, born not far from here, has long been a symbol of global technological power. Everything seems to be going perfectly, but that perfection is only visible from a distance. The closer we look, the more obvious it becomes that not everyone is moving at the same pace. Beneath the rapid economic growth, there is growing pressure, quietly and unnoticed. Rents begin to creep up, then skyrocket. Homes that were once affordable are becoming nearly impossible to afford. Modest neighborhoods slowly transform into expensive areas accessible only to those with high incomes. At that point, something begins to shift. For some, the price increase is just a number. But for others, it is a line. The line between survival and losing everything. Even a person working full-time can find themselves in a situation where their paycheck no longer covers their living expenses. The bills keep coming in. Rent keeps rising. Their savings slowly dwindle. There's no one big moment that shatters everything. There's no explosion or big warning. Just small stresses that keep building until finally, it all comes crashing down. One late payment. One tough decision. One day when there are no more options. Suddenly, someone who had a roof over their head yesterday has nothing today. This is the flip side of a wealthy city. On one hand, people talk about innovation, investment, and the future. On the other hand, there are those who don't even know where they'll sleep tonight. The gap between the two groups widens. What makes this situation even more disheartening is that all of this is happening amidst prosperity. The problem in Seattle isn't that the city lacks money. The problem is who can survive in it. Seattle's homelessness problem didn't emerge overnight. It didn't arise from a single mistake or decision. Rather, it's the result of many factors slowly piling up and reinforcing each other until a crisis forms that's hard to stop. To understand it, we must look deeper. One of the most obvious causes is the housing crisis. In this city, shelter is no longer just a basic necessity. It has become a commodity, something to be fought over, and it's becoming increasingly expensive. Construction continues. New buildings continue to rise. However, not all are built for everyone. Many are modern apartments with high prices. They are designed for those who can afford them. Meanwhile, options for low-income people are dwindling. Modest homes are disappearing, replaced by more profitable projects. Without realizing it, the city is starting to lose its balance. On the other hand, economic inequality is becoming increasingly apparent. Seattle is a place where two worlds coexist but rarely truly meet. On the one hand, there are high-paid professionals working for big companies and enjoying amenities and comfort. On the other hand, workers earning a standard wage struggle to keep up with the ever-rising cost of living. The gap between the two is widening. For those at the bottom, every price increase feels like a push to the brink. However, this problem isn't just about money. There are invisible wounds and burdens that can't always be quantified. Many of those living on the streets carry deeper stories. Stories of neglected mental health, trauma that never heals, and addiction that is often an escape from greater pain. Without adequate support, these problems slowly escalate until they become unmanageable. When someone reaches that point, homelessness is no longer a possibility. It's almost inevitable. At the same time, the existing support system often can't reach everyone. There are assistance programs, shelters are open, social services are operating. However, the number of people in need far exceeds the capacity of these resources. Many are left waiting. Many don't qualify. Many fall through the cracks of an imperfect system. When all these factors, unaffordable housing, rising inequality, mental health issues, and an overwhelmed system, converge, what we have is not just another social problem. It's a crisis that continues to grow quietly but surely. Perhaps most alarmingly, there's no one simple solution to fix it. In Seattle, this problem isn't just about losing homes. It's about how so many people slowly lose their footing in a city that keeps moving forward without waiting for anyone. As night falls on Seattle and the temperature slowly drops, the life that was hidden during the day begins to emerge. Beneath the dim light of street lamps, between imposing buildings, and in the city's rarely noticed corners, there is another life that operates by different rules. On cold sidewalks, a piece of cardboard can become a bed. Under bridges, the sound of overhead traffic provides a lullaby. Inside simple tents, people try to create a sense of security in a place that is never truly safe. This is life on the street. There is no fixed schedule. There is no comfort. There is no guarantee of tomorrow. Every day begins with the same questions. Where will I eat today? Where will I survive today? The little things that seem trivial to many become a real struggle here. Clean water, a place to wash, and even just a place to sit without being kicked out are not always available. And when night falls, the challenges become even greater. There's the piercing cold, the unrelenting rain, and the fear that never really goes away. Fear of losing the only thing you have. Fear of conflict, or simply fear of not waking up the next day. Some try to sleep in their vehicles, turning car seats into temporary resting places. Others keep moving from one place to another, avoiding raids or simply looking for a slightly safer place. But moving is not a solution. It's just a way to survive one more day. Amidst it all, there's a sense of loss that's hard to explain. Loss of privacy, loss of identity, and slowly loss of hope. Living on the streets isn't just about being homeless. It's about living without certainty, without protection, and without the space to truly feel human. What's often unseen is that many of them once lived like most people. They once had steady jobs. They had homes, or at least small rooms they could call their own. They had routines and simple dreams. But one by one, it all disappeared. When they finally found themselves on the streets, returning wasn't easy. The longer someone stayed outside the system, the harder it was to re-enter it. Without a fixed address, it was difficult to find work. Without a job, it was hard to find a place to live. Without either, the cycle continues with no clear way out. In Seattle, amidst the progress and luxury, there are thousands of people living this way every day. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but because, for them, it's the only way to survive. Amidst the growing crisis, Seattle hasn't stood still. Various policies have been tried. Different approaches have been implemented. However, it has become clear that the solution to this problem is never simple. The city is investing millions of dollars in emergency shelters. These temporary shelters provide a place for people living on the streets to stay, at least for a night. There are also rental assistance programs to prevent people from falling further behind before it's too late. One of the most talked about approaches is the housing first concept. It's a simple yet bold idea. It provides housing without strings attached or complicated processes. The idea is that a person can't improve their life if they don't even have a safe place to start. For some, this approach brings hope. Some have managed to get off the streets and slowly rebuild their lives. However, criticism has also arisen. Some question its effectiveness. Others see it as a short-term solution that doesn't address the root of the problem. The policy that often sparks the most controversy is the clearing of homeless encampments. Tents are dismantled. People's belongings are being moved or lost. People are being asked to leave with no certainty about where to go next. Some residents saw this as necessary. It was seen as a way to keep the city clean, restore a sense of security, and control a situation that was increasingly out of control. But for others, it felt like moving the problem, not solving it. When a camp was cleared, the people didn't disappear. They just moved. They moved to another street, to another corner, to a place that might be more hidden but not better. This is where the conflict arose, between the desire to help and the need to regulate, between empathy and worry. In the midst of it all, there were real people whose lives were constantly upended by decisions made above them. No policy was perfect. No solution was entirely satisfactory. In Seattle, this issue wasn't just about what to do. It was about who should come first. Over time, as the number of homeless people in Seattle continued to rise, one thing became increasingly clear. The situation was not only a growing humanitarian crisis, but also a source of tension slowly creeping into the community. In some parts of the city, the change was palpable. Small shops began installing extra security measures. Doors were locked earlier. Suspicious stares became more commonplace. For some residents, this wasn't just a social issue. It was part of everyday life. They saw the sidewalks changing, the neighborhoods feeling different, and the sense of safety slowly fading. On the other hand, for those living on the streets, the world felt smaller. Space for survival was becoming more limited. Places to rest were becoming scarce. Acceptance was increasingly difficult to find. They were battling not only cold and hunger but also rejection every day. These two worlds coexisted, but they rarely truly understood each other. One felt threatened, the other felt abandoned. Between them, a narrative began to form. Some saw the homeless as victims of a failed system and unfair circumstances. Others saw them as a problem, a nuisance that needed to be addressed. These differing perspectives slowly created a chasm. Conversations grew more heated. Opinions became sharper. Empathy sometimes begins to fade. Media, policies, and personal experiences all shape how people perceive this crisis. Over time, the dividing lines become more pronounced, not just between homeowners and renters, but also between those who choose to care and those who are growing weary. In Seattle, this tension isn't always visible. It doesn't always manifest as major conflicts or loud voices, but it's there in the halting conversations, the averted glances, and the small decisions that are slowly shaping the direction of this city. Perhaps most worrying is when people become accustomed to it. When a crisis becomes commonplace, change becomes harder. Amidst Seattle's ongoing crisis, something persists. It's not big, and it's not always visible, but it is strong enough to keep some people trying. Hope. It doesn't come in the form of instant solutions, nor does it come as a perfect answer. Rather, it appears in small acts done every day. In the corners of the city, volunteers walk from tent to tent. They bring hot food, drinking water, and sometimes just a conversation. These are simple things, but to someone rarely seen, they can mean everything. Nonprofit organizations continue to work, often with limited resources. They provide basic healthcare, help with paperwork, and try to reconnect people who have lost their way with the system. It's not easy. It's not fast. But it gets done. On the other hand, housing programs are starting to show glimmers of success. Some people are slowly getting off the street. They find a place to live. It's a small space, but it's enough to start over. From there, they start looking for work. They build a routine. Little by little, they regain what was once lost. But the journey is never easy. Some succeed, some fall back, and some remain trapped with no clear way out. Everyone carries a different story, different wounds, challenges that cannot always be solved with the same approach. But despite these limitations, efforts continue. Not because they are sure of complete success, but because giving up is not an option. In Seattle, hope isn't always seen in statistics or recorded in official reports. It exists in the small steps of someone trying to get up, in an outstretched hand offered without being asked. It exists in the belief that change, no matter how small, still matters. It may not be enough to solve everything, but it is enough to prove that, even in the midst of a crisis, there are people who choose not to stop caring.